Hi, everyone. It's Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. I have a little dog here beside me who I think is trying to get down. Yes, he did. We are talking about how to be okay, how to be 100% okay with being alone, why you don't feel that way, what we can do about it. And it dovetails with a show that's for next week, which are 5 things that are truly going to make you happy and successful. What accounts for a happy and successful life? That's next week. This week, we're talking about how to be alone, and what that means, and the wonderful things there are in this for you. Let's do a prayer, get us all on the same page, and then we'll launch off into this, okay? A lot of different aspects that we have to talk about. Dear God, thank you so much for all of us being here together in the experience of you and of our lives. It's you working through us all the time in the high and low aspects, because you are all we are and all this world is. We thank you so much, dear God, for all of this, and we say this prayer now that we will be fully open to the message that we receive within us. And we ask now to be in this higher energy as we talk about these things, that we may hear very clearly what our next step is and the next. We give up knowing anything, because that's the old ego child's mind, and it's the you through us that knows it all. And we give our energy to that at last, at least for these 90 minutes. We so thank you for all of this, and we say this prayer in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of everyone listening to this show today. Thank you, and so it is. Amen. See my friends up there. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. What are we talking about being alone? I want you to understand there is an acute form of this and a chronic form of this. We're going to be talking the majority of this show about the chronic form of this. The acute form of this is, for example, grief when someone has passed away, or a divorce when someone goes out of your life, or losing a friendship. That can be very acute. It is a period of time, right, that you feel terrible, and if you will keep moving through the grief and sorrow, you should come out all right at the end. However, there is a chronic loneliness, we're going to talk about that often triggers when you're alone. And we're going to talk about that a lot today too. Not only are we going to talk about these things, but we are also going to talk about what fixes these things. You might want to have a pad and pencil, a pad and pen there, or your computer there to type into. I type faster than I can write. And I do want to say that these things are suggestions for you to consider after the show. I hope this show is just not entertainment value, and that you're actually considering some of these things through the week. It will do you good if you'll at least consider them. The key to so much of being okay with being alone is knowing yourself really well. Not only is it knowing yourself, but it's ceasing the abandonment of yourself. You see, when we think negative thoughts about ourselves and our lives, and even the people we love, we are abandoning the truth. And if God is the truth, and if we are the aspect of God, we are abandoning, certainly, ourselves. So, part of this being okay with being alone is putting all that in place. Knowing yourself, acknowledging what is weak and broken in you, having it fixed. Hello, Sheila. Oh, I'm so glad you're with us today. Fixing it, and getting on with a perfectly marvelous life, whether you're alone or whether you're partnered. Now, one of the things to knowing yourself better is to know whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. I've looked at a lot of articles on this subject. I didn't like any of them, so I wrote my own. But one of the things I always talk about first is, are you an introvert or an extrovert? That's how to be okay with being alone. This is the shallow part, but nevertheless important. Good morning. And good morning, Kat. Good morning, all of you. I'm so glad to be with you this morning. So, those of you who have listened to me before, I have to put this on the table for those of you who have not. I want you to think of, certainly throw out everything you know about introvertism and extrovertism, and I want you to think of introvertism and extrovertism as a scale, as a line scale from 0 to 10. Let's say 0 is a total introvert. By the way, here's the important thing. Introverts get energy from being alone. The other side, 10, is the extrovert. These are people that get energy from other people by being with other people. They get charged that way. Now, you got a lot of play between 0 and 10, okay? You might not know, all of you, but I'm an introvert. I measure about a 0 or a 1 on the introvertism scale. I've taken the test. I have a very rich inner life that I participate in a lot. I'd be okay with that. Now, it's important, though, and I think it is more important for you guys who are 4, 5, and 6 on that scale, to know yourself, to really work with yourself, because it's pretty much of a slam dunk with me. If I've got 2 hours, I'm going to take it and spend it alone, okay? But what about you who are 4, 5, and 6 on that scale? This is where you really need to tune into yourself and find out what you really need right then. And it has to be beyond issues. It has to be beyond your issues. I had a client one time who was the most social butterfly I'd ever seen in my life. Why was she? See, that we always have to ask our motivation, right? Like we learned last week. Why was she? Well, she used to be the social butterfly, and she is an extrovert, because she didn't want to look at herself, didn't want to do deeper work. Wow, she is really sailing now, and she's certainly doing the deeper work, but we had to challenge why she was doing that. Is she still an extrovert? Indeed she is, but she does it for the right reasons, and she's perfectly okay with being alone. You see, what most people don't realize is no matter what you are, introvert or extrovert, that just means what you're going to do when you have some extra time and how you get your energy in that extra time, how you renew. The fact is, in this day and age, that's no excuse, introvertism or extrovertism, for not being all of it. You must be all of it. In this day and time, you must make your peace with being everything, knowing that in your quiet moments you're going to reach for people or reach for your aloneness. Okay? Very important. You have to do it all. If God is everything, guys, the light and the dark, everything, the things that hurt, the things that don't hurt, the things that give us pleasure, if God is everything, and I do believe that God's the energy of everything, we have to make our peace with everything. Why be terrified of anything if God's right in the middle of it? Unless we're fearing God, and we've got to get ourselves straight with that. It's all something you learned in your childhood, kiddos. Let's unlearn it, okay? So, moving beyond the introvert and extrovert thing, there are several personality disorders, as far as I'm concerned, that play into this. I saw one a couple of weeks ago, the dependent personality disorder. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about any of these. I work with psychology, but I'm not a psychologist. I want you all to do your research on some of these things I mentioned on the internet, okay? But let's talk about the dependent personality disorder as it relates to being alone, all right? The dependent personality disorder says, I can't do anything alone, that I doubt myself, I'm not good enough, I'm unsure. I always need somebody else's input. I actually need someone in charge telling me what to do. I don't want to take responsibility for myself. I'll make a mistake. I'll ruin my life. I can't make my own money. I need to prove myself to myself and others that I'm lovable and that only with somebody loving me am I worth something. That's the dependent personality, darlings. That's the personality that even if you marry, even if you partner, is always going to feel afraid that somebody will leave. So where is the truth-telling in a good partnership if you're always afraid that somebody's going to leave? It's somebody that if the partnership goes awry and dies in divorce or death or something like that, that they're panicking because they can't take care of themselves, you see. This isn't just about how much we loved somebody and the problems in the marriage or in the partnership or not. It's not about that, is it? It's about then us and us not being whole. The good news about this is everybody can grow up. But guys, in my practice, I see a lot of people who aren't grown up, who have this dependent personality. And what they do is they have disguised themselves. You see, age does make us smarter, so it doesn't show as much. We learn how to do, how to cover that up with a nice glossy image, when inside we are children. And that needs to be addressed. Another thing that plays into this sometimes is our narcissism. And don't get offended when I'm saying any of this, because, guys, I happen to believe that we've got a real narcissistic society. Everything right now. This is a society totally separated from itself. The individuals are separate from themselves. We are separate from each other. We can thank this intense narcissism and self-involvement that we see everywhere. Oh my God, the selfies, right? Oh my God, the social media comparisons. Oh my God, the blame heaped on everybody because everybody thinks they have an opinion about you or somebody else. This is ridiculous. We need to focus in a loving, powerful way on ourselves, fix what's broken, keep going and fixing what's broken, realizing we're all broken and all perfect at the same time, and go on and live good lives. Instead, we take selfies. Okay, kids. So let's talk about narcissism for a moment. The narcissist in their relationship to being alone is going to say, what will people think about me if I don't have a partner? Somehow I look less than if I don't have a partner. Everybody else has a partner. I've got to have a partner. I've got to have a partner that looks good. If I don't have a partner, they're going to think something's wrong with me. I always wondered if something was wrong with me. I can't possibly let anybody think there's something wrong with me, so I need a partner. If someone is good looking and smart, I bet I'll be more accepted. I need to prove to myself and others that I'm lovable. It increases my value. It's interesting because it's not a bit about loving the other person in either of these scenarios, is it? And yet we call it love, you see, in our unawareness. Sheila, I'm not sure I understand what your note is there. Jean Marie, Is there something that I need to know about that? Maybe I am not up on top of things like I should be. I'm not sure what that means. So write me and let me know. When we have abandoned ourselves, our true selves is what I'm talking about, abandoning. We've all got images on top of things. We all like to think of ourselves a certain way, of course. But I'm talking about your true self. Oh, okay, darling. Thank you. She said she was sharing with her friend. Thank you, darling. I appreciate it for explaining that. I wanted to be there with you. Welcome, Jean Marie. You have to understand there is yourself that you think you are, with all the nips and tucks and things that we have done to ourselves to put one foot in front of the other, to think better of ourselves, right? To survive, quite frankly. And then there is something inside that is the authenticity of self, the real deal, who you really are as the aspect of God you are. Of course, even when you're in the ego, and the ego child's mind, the part of you that thinks like a child, you're still God. It's just that these are the things from the past. And the highest mind, of which you are too, is this present moment. Without those issues, you're fine here. Okay. All of these things, the society itself is helping us separate, abandon ourselves, to look at ourselves from the outside, to question ourselves. And in the questioning of ourselves, we have come out of our childhood and our dependence, or we're moving out of it. And what we do is we self-attack when we are not as wonderful as someone else is perceived. Instead of developing ourselves, learning more, being who we are. I had a marvelous, there's an article that I'm going to give you all next week that I want to quote from, that I really thought was a fine article. This woman, her name is Leah Gnocchi, and she says, I strive to excel, advance, and do splendid things with what has been entrusted to me. I absolutely love that. If anybody's writing that down, I'll repeat it. I strive to excel, advance, and do splendid things with what has been entrusted to me. I love that, because all you've got is what has been entrusted to you. What are you doing blaming other people, shaming other people on the internet? It's just insane what's going on right now. Let's develop you even more than where you are right now, even more than where I am right now. Let's keep going. It's a wonderful life when we do. When we have abandoned ourselves, dear hearts, two things set in most of the time. Well, maybe three. First of all, there's a futility. It's the ego child's mind that says, I can't, I won't, I'm running out of time, or honestly, any of the excuses will do. Futility is when you are being called by your best nature, your highest self, to move in some way, mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, and you won't. Why wouldn't you? You say, if it's so darn good for me. And I say one of the reasons is because of fear. You have learned not to. I don't believe in laziness. There's no such thing. All laziness is that energy is going this way instead of where you want it to go. That's all. So that's not, what do I want to say here? It's not unattainable to find that out. So you find that out, you resolve that, you then write the energy. That's why we call what we do energy psychology. You change the energy and the behavior changes. All of a sudden you're going in a direction more compatible with your highest self. You see? Good. I hope so. If you have any questions about it, let me know. Okay? Thank you for that. All right. So two other things settle in when we have abandoned ourselves. One is desperation. Desperation. I saw that a couple of weeks ago. A woman really objected to me saying, you're using desperate energy here when you've met this man. I don't remember what she said it was, but she didn't like the word desperation. But darlings, that's what it is. The more you abandon yourself, and the longer it has been going on, the more desperate you become in the ego child's mind. Not only, and the more dissatisfied you are with yourself, the less you are doing for yourself to give yourself a happy life, the more desperate you become for somebody to give it to you. Don't you understand? Of course. Now we're going to tell you how to correct this, but let's put it on the table and call it what it is, because guys, happy people sometimes look at hard things and admit it and resolve it, get through it, and go on and live successful lives. The second thing that come out of this, or the third thing, because we've got futility now, we've got desperation. The other thing is that sometimes fantasy jumps in there. Because you are so desperate and you feel so bad to put one foot in front of the other to give yourself a happy life, you create fantasy. But as you've heard me say, I don't know how many times, guys, fantasy is its own reward. You cannot create out of fantasy. Fantasy is where you go to make yourself feel better. You did it when you were a little kid. Boy or girl, you did it when you were a little kid. And we've taken it into adulthood where it's really in the way of creating a nice life now. We've got to challenge fantasy. Fantasy is a hard thing to break down because you don't want to let it go. See, I'm as good as what you want to let go. So if I see you don't want to let go of something that's not in your best interest, that's what I got to work on for a while, right? I always have to say, no COVID, just nose running. Okay. Fantasy is its own reward. It has been proven to hit the opiate centers of the brain. So it's like our heroin. You see? It's great. We think we need it to survive. On a subconscious level, we do not. We've got to come into the space where reality is marvelous and that we are creating it dynamically and well. Hello! Well, one of my girlfriends just popped on. Hi, Linda. And she asked a question. She said, how specifically does one change the energy of futility to be more compatible with the highest self? What thought or action? What a great question, Linda. I can talk for 2 days on that one. First of all, let me say the energy of the ego child's mind has as its core futility. Why? Because it's the child. And the child does not create its own reality. So until we exorcise those marvelous issues that we all have that are part of the system of the ego child's mind, we're going to always experience futility. So if somebody comes to me and says, I don't want to be futile anymore, well, I say, well, isn't that just wonderful? Let's find all the reasons you are, resolve those, And let's now go on and live a dynamic life as the higher self mind, which is what happens. Because when we start releasing the energy in the ego child's mind, where does all that energy go? Where does it go? It goes into this moment. It's not in the past anymore. See, the past is full of fixations of energy. Nobody says what those fixations are made of. They're just energy. They're just energy. So as we release those points of energy that have kept you stuck and of a convinced mind in the ego child's mind arena, the energy releases into the present moment. And it releases into the present moment and the spiritual, energetic body. Therefore, you start becoming a really great manifester. All of this that you hear about manifesting your life is really true. But the reason people don't think it is all the energy is stuck in the emotional body. And you don't manifest with that kind of energy. The negativity, the heartbreak, the disgust, the, God knows, anger, sadness, everything else that's down there. You don't manifest from that. You manifest out of clarity, out of positivity, out of everything, out of knowing that it's all perfect and God is right there with you. No matter what, even if you're hurting, you see. So, going back to your question, my darling Linda, futility is part of the ego child's mind. We can lighten it, but as long as you're indulging in the ego child's mind, making ego child's mind decisions, thinking of the world through the ego child's mind, you're going to have an element of futility. The only way that futility is relieved completely is by the higher mind, the higher self-mind, this marvelous, love-based experience of God in you. And some people might be objecting to the word God. That's just my word. Think of it as positive energy if you want. But there's another element of you, the highest mind. It's another mind of you that is love-based and positive and well beyond any of these issues. And there's nothing futile there because it knows you're creating your whole experience. And you are. You're creating everything. If somebody has passed away, did you create that? No. But I believe you agreed to it. And there's something there for you in that. Now, guys, you're going to have to prove this to yourself. How do you prove it to yourself? By going on this journey. By going on the journey. Linda, I hope that answered your question. Because it's just a matter of now confronting anything in that child's mind that comes up. Becoming, remember the triad, I need to put this on the table for everybody, is awareness leads to consciousness, leads to enlightenment. So we have to be aware of our issues first. We can't be emotionally deceptive here. We all are until we're not. But emotional honesty is a powerful thing, so you can say, look at me feeling that way. Jeez, why do I feel that way? And finding out and resolving it and going on. Linda has given me the go-ahead. She says I can leave this topic now. No, actually, I'm making fun, Linda, because you and I are such good friends. Thank you for saying that was a beautiful explanation. I appreciate it. All right, moving along. There's certain things, Linda has brought up the fact, there's certain things that are always in the ego child's mind, guys. We can lighten them, but they exist there, you know? So the whole point is, the whole journey to who you really are and the happiness that you seek is from the fear-based ego child's mind to the love-based higher self mind. And it's a process. It's not a light switch you turn on and just expect it all to be there. That's not going to happen. Okay. We learn in the ego child's mind, brilliant little kids that we are, we learn to protect ourselves there. We protect ourselves by pretending that something doesn't hurt us when it does. We protect ourselves by isolating and withdrawing. We protect ourselves by having a temper and getting mad, letting that horse, stallion anger, I'm going to just run over anything that gets in my way. That's a defense. We have a million defenses out there designed to protect ourselves. We've learned this in our childhood. But are you protecting yourself still or really living? Because let me tell you, as an adult and in the adult mind, God communicates with you a lot, all the time. It's going to tell you if you need to do something, if you're in danger, if you're not making a smart decision. There are a million things. That's what anxiety is for. Anxiety tells you on the wrong path. You might want to think a little harder about this, find out more information, or do something. This isn't going to work for you. We need to listen to it instead of going, oh, take my anxiety away. I feel so awful about it. Let's not be afraid of it, and let's say, what's going on here? What am I doing? You see? Many times we don't grow and deepen and change and transcend this ego child's mind because we're still trying to protect ourselves. You're trying to protect yourself from what happened in the past. But you've got many more options as the adult, most of which we do not see because we're a child. We're in that egoic child's mind. So we've got to challenge it, guys. That's what personal growth is. Coming out of the fear-based mind into the love-based mind. Seeing more globally, realizing everything, not taking things personally anymore. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay. When you are trying to protect yourself above all else, you have abandoned yourself. Now, isn't that the trick? It doesn't look like you've abandoned yourself. It looks like you're focusing entirely on yourself, but that's the problem. You shouldn't be focusing entirely on yourself. You're part of a system. You're part of a system. You are a participant in a system. So certainly we need to know ourselves well, and we need to participate in the system. So you leave part of it out when you're afraid all the time. We focus on ourselves and are enormously unhappy, and we're seeing all the things that are wrong with us instead of working on ourselves and participating in the system. I think you understand now. So you abandon yourself when you don't follow through with the rest of it, you see? You're missing you. The truth of the matter is, a lot of times when we focus on us, we can't see the forest for the trees syndrome. And we're focusing on every little thing that's wrong with us. And instead of seeing any of the things that are right with us, if that's not the abandonment of self, I don't know what is. And if you are trying to attract a wonderful partner in this life, you have to first be what you attract. You can't be missing, guys. Because if your true self is missing, there's nothing to be attracted to. Just an image. And you're much more than that. I think that what we've all been through in 2020 and 2021, the COVID scare, the quarantine, the doing things differently, has really revealed our experience of self, our relationship to ourselves. The people have sailed if they have done some of these suggestions that I am going to be making, and people have suffered when they have not. It's the same thing, guys. You want to work on yourself early because life happens. You didn't create it. Life happens, right? People die. Relationships sometimes don't work out. We lose our jobs. Various things happen to us in life. Do you have a sustaining force inside of you? Do you know, or do you not, that everything is fine? That everything really is perfect? Here we have a momentary setback. I have on my refrigerator something my husband and I like a lot. I'm not going to probably quote this correctly, but it says, everything will be all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not the end. Isn't that wonderful? Everything will be all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not the end. Everything is all right. Why isn't it all right if it's going toward the end? If it's going toward your good? And guys, it just will. The only thing why it doesn't go to your good is you change the energy from the ego child's mind. You're in the ego child's mind. That script is written. That script is written. You've got to change that script for the ending to be different. You understand that? You can't keep drawing in bad partners and fantasizing about how they'll change into something good, or they are good. You know, sometimes we put a nice gloss over things and don't see things realistically. We can't continue to write that script and expect a long, lasting, abiding, wonderful love there. That's fantasy. Okay. So let's talk about the elements of work on yourself, because you know, doing what I do for a living, I've got to tell you, I think everybody that I've worked with for years, by the way, will all say life is so much better when you work on yourself. Life is so much more exciting. Things start coming in that you never thought before. Miracles happen. Yes, we are the embodiment of those miracles. But we've got to make ourselves ready, right, to receive them in a realistic way. That sounds odd, doesn't it? That here are the miracles coming and they're real, but they are. It's not something that's airy-fairy. But you got to get yourself ready. You got to work on yourself. So, what do I mean by work on yourself? I've got a whole bunch of things here that I've listed that I think are important information that I want to give you. Write down what you think you can't do. That's a good place to start working on yourself. You see? All right. Shall we? Let's go in. Let's dive in. You need to confront any kind of avoidance. Look, nobody likes being hurt, and everybody has been. We have to go past what society is saying out there. We have to find out what real love is. I get real thrilled, and I really mean it, when somebody comes in and sits in front of me and says, I don't have a clue what love is. And I say, that's the most powerful thing I've ever heard. Let's go on and get to work on it. I have, by the way, clients that are remote from all over North America, and they're all dear, darling clients, so I don't have to have you sitting in the chair in front of me to do this work. It's just as good remotely. Why? Because all I'm doing is working with your energy, not working with your physical body. I'm just working with your physical body as it relates to your energy. because what the energy is doing is what your body is doing, what your behavior is doing. Do you realize that every love is a new model for it? And the only real reason to be in partnership with another is to give the love that you know about and receive the love that the other person knows about. Well, if it's that important, I think we ought to find out what it is on the deepest level of our being. And I suggest you do that. We must realize that this whole key to life is not about finding somebody to love us, which is what the ego child's mind wants to do, but loving. And not just loving a partner, but finding yourself as love and using that in all aspects of your day and your evening. Now we're talking about being ready for a deep and intimate and lasting relationship. Exchange that and your life will never be the same. You can't attract that, though, until you know what it is and are participating in it yourself. Number 2. I think we all need a spiritual dimension in our lives. I know that I would have told you that I was a very spiritual person, that I've had a relationship with God all my life. But in one astounding experience, which is what I call real spiritual surrender, I knew that if I died in that moment, it was all perfect. And of course, what was dying was the ego child's mind. Not the ego, you'll never lose that. But this part of you that thought like a child. Now, I worked on that for years. If you think that that was just something that happened to me, no, you're wrong. I worked on myself for years before I had that very surprising experience. I wasn't seeking it. It just happened when it was supposed to. And nobody can predict when that's going to be. You just simply must know that there's something more in you to be explored. I've always been fascinated by that. How great can you be? How great can I be? It's all about potential. Let's play in those fields for a while, right? I think that what happens when you have a spiritual dimension, no matter what you call it, you can connect with nature, you can connect with anything, but there is, go back and listen to some of my very, very early, I think it's like the first lecture I ever gave on what God is in us and in all things. I think that's a real important thing for you to listen to. I suggest you go back and find those lectures. They were on Blog Talk Radio before we started filming at Facebook Live. Spiritual dimension, when you finally reach it, and even as you go closer and closer to it, you are assured you're not alone. Even in your aloneness, boy, you're not alone. It's because that connection to self is now there, and that connection to self is the aspect of God you are, the true one, without all the artificial crapola on top of it. We call it image and pretense. It's just you at your essentiality. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's what the world needs. It doesn't have that. Not yet. Guys, this spiritual dimension, even if you do not call it God, which, by the way, you should one day, is a marvelous thing to know is working in your life. I had a girlfriend years ago. Gosh, this must have been, I want to say this is probably maybe 35 or 40 years ago. because I was doing some form of this back then. And I remember being in the car with her. I remember exactly where we were. And I said something about God, and she jumped all over me. She said, "Don't you dare mention God to me. I don't believe in any of that. I hate that kind of talk. I will not abide it. And if we're going to be friends, you've got to drop it." So it's like, whoa, okay, I drop it. No problem. She started going with me to my classes, to my acting classes. She started going to even my my business talks for businesses. And she was just there a lot for about a year and a half before she had to move away. It was the funniest thing. I guess it was about 10 or 15 years ago I heard from her again. I had lost touch with her. She called, I believe it was from upper New York State, and she said, "I have something to tell you." And I said, "What is that, darling?" And she said, "I found God." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yes, God was the energy you always talk about, but you were so nice not to tell me." And she had found it on her own. So I don't care what you call it, kids. You could call it the lamp on the desk or the dog at your feet. It is energy. And energy is God, you see. God said, "I am that I am," not who I am. We personify God in our little small minds because we only understand the who, right? It's energy. And we are the who because we are the individual aspects of that energy. That's how it works. So if you are not in touch with that, yeah, I think you'd feel lost. So the point is not to believe what Martha says. That's silly. Go prove it to yourself. Start studying. Start reaching out for something. See what's out there. Find it yourself. Number 3, everyone is in the growth process of knowing how to take care of yourself. And just when you think you know how to take care of yourself, what happens? You age. Whole new set of rules to take care of yourself. Guys, there's a way to take care of yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And here's one of the problems. You're perpetuating your issues. There it is. And that's one of the things we have to learn that I think is extremely important, that I am always working on. Why are you doing this to yourself? Now, you're going to say, in your ego tells the mind, if you're still there, you're going to say, "I don't do any of this crap to myself." And I'm saying, yes, you do. Yes, you do. So we're going to find out. We've got to find out together. Hi, who is that tuning in? That's one of my, I guess that's Jim. It looks like I'm tuning into myself. Anyway, whoever that is, and I think it is Jim, hello. Guys, we do everything to ourselves. And I'll tell you something, that is an enormous step in the right direction when you realize it. Because then you, wait a minute, you don't just stop it immediately. You see it and you go, "Gosh, darn it, oh, yeah, I am doing that to myself." And then you say, "I'm not going to do it." And then you do it again and you go, "Oh, that looked different. Oh my God, I did it to myself again in a different way. I'm so tricky." And that happens a couple of times, and then all of a sudden, you don't do it anymore. Isn't that something? It's real important. I think part of our spiritual development is saying, "Oh my God, I'm doing it to myself." Speaking of being alone concerning that, makes you feel alone when you're doing things that are not in your best interest. And I mentioned last week, a dear friend of mine, many of you all who are friends of mine knew her. She's passed now. But we had a friend who was just adorable and precious, and she knew all this spiritual work. We had many talks about this, but she chose to drink herself to death and to be alone and to be despairing in that aloneness. when love was all around her. I remember sitting with her when she was dying and saying, why are you doing this? And she'd say, I don't know, but I have to. Perhaps she was doing it to wake up other members of her friends and family. She did it for us all, perhaps. Who knows? But that's a perfect example of she didn't want to be alone, and yet she created aloneness. We have to know how to take care of ourselves, kid. And to do that, we have to realize what we're doing to ourselves, and we have to confront the reasons why we're doing it, and then we will stop when we are at the bottom line of all of it. Number 4, it will help your... Hi, Karen. Oh, I'm so glad to talk with you, my darling. I haven't talked to you in a long time. I hope you're doing fine and healthy and well. Just a suggestion. It's part of your self-actualization, which means you coming into yourself and meeting your own needs in every aspect. And boy, that'll help the feeling of being alone, is if you will provide for yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Taking it a step further than that, provide for yourself financially. Provide for yourself, guys. If and I want to say that, we sometimes block our abundance, block money, block all sorts of abundances. Money is just not the only abundance. And we don't realize that, for example, money is energy. And all energy is God, if you're going to call it that. You don't block the energy of friendship. You don't block the energy of kindness. You don't block the energy of help coming from the television. But you block money. Why? You got to find out. Because I'm telling you, you're going to, part of the reason you feel alone is you feel bereft, you feel deprived. Those are all words that have to do with being alone. So let's fix some of these things. You should have your own money. Even if you're in partnership with someone that has more money than you, you should have your own money. Bottom line. You have to have a sense of being responsible and accountable for yourself. I think I referred to this person a couple of weeks ago who said to me, and she was in total fantasy about somebody, she said, I'm so tired of being responsible for myself. I don't want to ever be responsible for myself again. I want to find somebody who'll, will take that kind of responsibility. And I thought, holy macadocious. And I suggested we work a lot more often, because I said, you better change your mind about that, because that's giving your power away. It's giving your future away. It's giving everything away. It's saying, I don't want a responsibility. And that does not head in a good direction. You better love the fact that you're creating this moment. Love the fact that you're here working the gears and levers, that you're seeing things more clearly, that God is telling you opportunities to seize upon, that you do it when you're told. It's exciting. It's the key, one of the keys, to a very dynamic life. You're going to provide for yourself. You're going to be responsible for yourself. If you are not, for God's sake, kids, go to work. We don't believe in the, say, dependent personality disorder, that we can ever be responsible for ourselves. You're going to have to prove that, yes, you can. You've got to learn how to do it. A good coach who also can do some business coaching like I do, but I'm not the only one, can show you how to do that. Get to work. Number 5. You need to develop creative outlets. You've got to express yourself. Now, that doesn't seem so important when you're wearing a mask. because there's nothing there to express except what everybody else is expressing. The true individuality of the experience comes from going on this journey to be your best self and finding what you really have to say, right? Creative outlets, though, at every level of experience, at every level of consciousness, are very helpful. Finding work and hobbies and interests that turn on your passion. And you might say, well, I haven't felt passion in years. If you're wondering where your passion is, it's there. It's just buried. Because nobody likes their passion taken away or made fun of or anything else. So we learn to protect it. Well, you've got to learn how to protect it in more dynamic ways, by being yourself, by choosing better friends, by choosing people that honor you and say kind things to you instead of hurtful things. The interesting thing is you bury it because you think nobody values it, but you're burying it because you're not valuing it. Does that make sense? And you haven't learned to live a balanced life so that you're safe, okay? We also say, oh, I can't do that because I don't paint like Monet. I can't possibly paint because I don't paint like Monet. Oh, for God's sake, get over yourself. You're not supposed to paint like Monet. You're supposed to paint like you. You're supposed to sculpt like you. You're supposed to cook like you. You're supposed to do things like you. Find out what that is. You've got to go on that journey, kids. Stop being apologetic for things that don't need apologies. Develop yourself. We give up instead of developing ourselves, you know. Easy breezy. You develop yourself instead of doing what you should do. Learn. No one knows everything. Keep learning, keep growing. The opportunities that get there for you, more than they've ever been in the world, opportunities are there for you. The other thing that is a part of this note that I'm giving you, your creative note, is there are two things in the world that really help us and will help us not feel alone. One is pleasure and one is gratification. There are two different things. Pleasure is momentary. I can see a gorgeous sunset and I think, oh, and it might put me in touch with the God of all there is, and it's very pleasurable. But as soon as that sunset is gone, I'm on to the next thing. And that's what pleasure is. We may enjoy a television show that teaches us something. It's may be very pleasurable. Good. Enjoy. But the problem comes in a life where there is pleasure and no gratification. Or there's no pleasure or gratification. That's a problem. If you don't think that's depression, I don't know what is. Gratification is much more profound because you're investing in you. You're using that creative aspect of you. Gratification is trying to write something when you've never written before, or writing because you just have to write when you have written before. It's trying your hand at throwing some colors around on a canvas. It's creating something. It's using you. It's much more powerful than pleasure. Not that there shouldn't be pleasure in your life, but you should have a lot of gratification. That means getting to work, doesn't it? That means trying new things. That means using you. That's the source of gratification. Using you. What was that marvelous quote that I just read you? I strive to excel, advance, and do splendid things with what has been entrusted to me. The interesting thing is sometimes when we're in this egoic child's mind, where we're not fully developing ourselves and using ourselves. Hi, Peter. We don't have a clue what's been entrusted to us because it's down there very deeply. We've been hiding it from our mothers and fathers who've been dead for 35 years. Come on, kids. You got work to do. It doesn't make any sense. Not anymore. Next point, number 6. Develop loving friends. Truly loving friends who give and take energy with you. The thing is, we'll all say, oh, we got friends. Some people say, no, I don't have any friends. One way or another, it doesn't matter. You've got to understand what a relationship is. It's an exchange of energy. Now, there are 2 kinds of relationships. There is attachment, when it's just you attaching to someone or them attaching to you. And there's true connection. If you are lonely, make that true connection. Now, here is something interesting about psychology. I work with people all the time, and they may be in fantasy. In fact, most people are when they first come to me. They've got a fantasy going on. And the interesting thing about this is they make attachment, but not true connection. And they're lonely. Attachment will keep you lonely. Attachment is based on, well, I'm going to be really super nice to you because I may need you one day. Wow. That's not true love, is it? That's dependence. So we have to move past attachments and find out what real love is, and then make true connections, motivated just because you're loved. And being very discerning with your friendships to make sure there's an exchange of energy. Now, all doesn't have to be at the same time. If I have a friend that's hurting, I'm going to give to them. If it's a great friendship and I've chosen well, one day I'm going to need that. But I'm not doing it because I need something from them. And I fear that one day I may need something from them. They'll provide it or they won't. But I made a good decision about friendships that I have. Because they want to be the friend that I am. Friendship, relationship is an exchange of energy. Yes, thank you, Peter. Peter said attachment is a trap. Beware. It is. However, and what's remarkable about this attachment is you may be doing things for people, but when you need it, oftentimes they're not there because this wasn't a deep connection, you see? Guys, no, attachment is not what you are, what you're seeking. It may be what you're in. But find the friendships that can really develop over time. I mean, connection develops over time. Who do you find fascinating? Go to the damn party alone. Find the most interesting person in the room. Say, I want you to go have lunch with me. I want you to go have a cup of coffee with me. Let's sit down. I want you to tell me who you are. Tell me your story. One of the writers that I like so much in life is Pat Conroy. Do you all know him? Wrote so many good books. Such an interesting human being. I've read a lot about him. He was kind of an inspiration of mine to go down deeply emotionally when I wrote the book that I did, that I'm finishing now. And I liked him so much because he said he had such a cute curiosity. And you can say, well, he was just looking for stories on one level, which indeed he was. But on a whole nother level, he was just loving and curious about other people. So he would sit down to somebody on a park bench and say, tell me a story. Or people would be going through the receiving line to, the book line so he could autograph their copy of the book, and he'd find somebody fascinating and he was like, tell me a story. It would drive his handlers crazy because he couldn't keep on a time schedule. It was a very cute story about him. I say that one of your most attractive qualities is curiosity. One of anybody's most attractive qualities, curiosity. But how many people in this world are not curious? And you want to say, is there a character flaw there that they're not curious? Is it something flawed in them? That's what they probably say about themselves. It is not. It is that they are too self-absorbed. They're living an imbalanced life energetically. You know, we talked about the image. It was, you can't see the forest for the trees. I think sometimes we think we're the only tree in the forest. And we need to wake up and realize we are not. Because we are responsible for ourselves. We are entrusted to what has been given us. We need to learn and experience more of that on a more powerful level. But we're also part of this whole. We are also participants, you see. And I think that's an extremely important thing for you to take responsibility for. Number 7. We've got to realize that if you're alone, there's a damn good reason. If you're honest, you might realize that you're protecting yourself more than you want a partnership, and that takes a lot of emotional honesty to admit that. If you admit that, that's where the work begins, and we can certainly change your mind. But we've got to go into why you feel you continue to have to protect yourself. And by the way, not the least of which is you have to protect yourself from you because you're making all the bad decisions about other people. That could be part of it. So it's part of this is waking up to who you really are, being discerning, making really damn good decisions, being able to trust your own intelligence, and going on. You've got to learn how to love somebody else too. And many people are alone because they know they haven't learned that. They know they are not yet loving enough. So instead of sitting around going, oh, I'm so lonely, go and learn who you are as love. It's about consciousness work, consciousness studies, guys. This is an actual thing we do. It's a field. The other thing is, if you're caught in a pattern of choosing the wrong people who can't give you anything or who remind you of the parent, which they usually will, and your highest self is, one of the reasons you're alone is that your highest self is actually protecting you from being involved with people like this by keeping you alone. That's wonderful. Unless you really want a partner. And if you really want a partner, then we've really got to work on that. Because we got to bring you out of that pattern so that you can realize you don't need that anymore and choose well. You see? Number 8. Let's define what loneliness is. Let's talk about that so you can really understand this. Loneliness is when you are alone, but you have turned your aloneness into a pathology. Self-attacking and using it as a weapon against yourself. Need me to repeat that? That's important enough to write down. Loneliness is when you are alone, but you've turned your aloneness into a pathology, self-attacking, and using it as a weapon against yourself. Now, I want to tell you, I don't think you can afford to do this anymore. If you want a happy life, come on, okay? How do you use it as a weapon against yourself? Oh, because you're alone and lonely because something's always wrong with you. You always make wrong decisions. You never do things well enough. You just aren't that good a person. And all the other reasons in the world. We got to figure out what's going on down there. Challenge you with that. And when you clearly look at yourself, you go, I just blooming don't want to do that anymore. And it's the most miraculous thing. All of a sudden you see yourself making other decisions. I want to go and say one more time that love is about giving and receiving. Too many people think of love as just receiving. They just want somebody to love them. We spend our childhoods that way. Just love me, right? It's where people-pleasing comes from. But what do you have to give? Now, don't get airy-fairy on me here when we talk about this. I need for you to make a list of the practical things you have to give. And they come out of not your pretense, but of who you are. I would probably say, even without knowing you, because you're listening to a show like this, that you have a damn good heart. That you have a good heart. You're a good-hearted person. I'd say you're creative and unique in the way you look at life. You might have a love for people, a love for animals, a love for nature and what grows in the yard, a love for exercise and for being healthy. Who are you beyond these things that you think so limit you? You see, the things you think that so limit you are what's taking all your energy. Consciously, but subconsciously, which is, by the way, the most insidious thing. It's not always conscious. Science tells us, and you can read the reference if in the book, my book, The Life You Want. You can buy it on the website, The Life You Want. And science says that smart people, of which you are, think about 1,000 thoughts an hour. So what did you think about? Is that shocking? Does that challenge you to go, oh my God, I have no idea what I thought about in the last hour? Okay. Now the answer is not to be so conscious you're thinking and observing every thought you think. A little of that in the beginning is very helpful. But let me tell you, what we're trying to do is change the momentum of your thought. In other words, are you thinking positive things or are you thinking negative things? Positive things mean that you're more in the out of the egoic child's mind and into the higher self mind. If you're thinking more of the lower things, it's the egoic child's mind. You manifest out of these minds. Going to be a very important thing for you to work on. Because what we want you to do is live more now as your potential in the higher mind. Okay. Self-confidence comes from knowing how to be alone. This is the next point. How to take care of yourself, providing what you need in the moment, thinking positively, connecting with yourself. Not because you're afraid of connecting with the world, though. I want to put this on the table. You see, you can use any behavior from the ego child's mind or the higher self mind. For example, I've said I'm an introvert. With my free 2 hours, I'm probably going to pull inside and do something internal. I enjoy doing that. But if I did it to hide because I was afraid of you, it'd be the same behavior but a different motivation. And the motivation would not be in keeping with my higher self, would it? And it would make me enormously unhappy. Any behavior that you're doing, ladies and gentlemen, that is not in full compatibility and cooperation with the highest part of you is going to make you unhappy. So we have to have you be aware of what you're doing before you can shift and change that. There's a reason for the depression. There's a reason for this pathological loneliness. You see? Okay. We have to call you on that because it's not the natural and authentic you. We have to have everything aligned so that the child part of you sits in the back of the bus and that all parts of you believe the same thing. And you don't have that conflict inside you of believing and not believing. I want a partner, and yet I'm afraid of a partner. I'm wanting to have money. I don't want money. I'm afraid of it. I'm afraid of the lack of it. I'm afraid of it. Okay, there are all sorts of conflicts in us that we must challenge, we must look at, we must see what motivated those things on the deepest level. Guys, we can go to a psychologist and we can just talk about what seems to be the problem and what seems to be the motivation. It will not go away unless you've found the bottom line. And those bottom lines can be very confusing for many reasons, not the least of which, in our psychology, we make good things bad and bad things good. You better find all those loops and changes and, in other words, find somebody really good at challenging these things for you. Number 11, I don't like statistics. I really don't, because you can so easily manipulate them. And I found an article recently that said there's a study that spending too much time alone can lead to bad health. Being alone too much can cause depression, sleep issues, lethargy, and hopelessness. Now, it's interesting because that has just given the article away. They know nothing about the ego, child's mind, and the highest self. And like Linda pointed out, oh, hello, Samuel. So nice that you have joined us today. I know who you are. Thank you very much for being with us, my dear. And thank you so much for the note that I believe you sent me a while back on Facebook. That was very sweet of you. Meant a lot. Linda, my darling friend, a little earlier, asked about futility. The same thing. Hopelessness is just not quite as intense, but it's just about the same thing. And hopelessness comes from the ego child's mind. It is only living there. So it is related only to the issues that are there. Like the only two issues that are ever in the world for anybody. All the other issues fit under these issues, right? You don't care about me is number one, and number two is I never get what I want. Thank you, Samuel. Those two issues are what all the other issues are under. Those are the two categories. I never get what I want, and you don't care about me. Okay? So those are issues that only exist in the ego child's mind. There's the hopelessness and when you attach to these issues and you don't challenge them. We have to have you challenge them. So I find that statistics don't mean anything unless the whole individual and what is motivating them is taken into account. And guys, you can't do that. There's too much there. So you all look askance at statistics a little bit. I remember someone coming in to my classes at some point, and oh man, this man was such a narcissist and so full of himself and so afraid, right? And he came in and he said, well, the statistics are that women would have a better chance of being hit by a bus than they would finding a partner. And I just laughed when he left, but I did challenge him. But I laughed and I said, most of the women I know wouldn't want a partner like that. So, there's your statistic. You can throw it in the trash can. Okay. Do start activities in your life. Do some different things. Take some courses. Start some therapy. Mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Change and get comfortable with change. That's a very powerful thing for your aloneness. One of the reasons you're so alone is because your aloneness is empty. It's not rich. Richen up your aloneness. Do you cook for you because you're worth it? See, part of our spiritual journey is to find out that, wait a minute, we're worth it. I'm not just doing things for other people. So when those other people move in or out of our lives, what, are you going to eat hamburgers the rest of your life? From McDonald's? No. Do some things for you. Peter, always remember God gives us challenges so we can grow from meeting them. Thank you, God. Absolutely. Absolutely. These are life challenges. These are challenges we should have. What do we do most of the time, though? We complain. I always have a funny story about this, funny analogy, I should say. And that is, if you look in the mirror and your hair is going in all sorts of different directions, what do? You usually stand there, you see yourself pretty clearly, and you fix your hair, right? As best you can, in my case. But if you don't do that, if you do what most people do with their issues, is you stand there and you either yell at the mirror, yell at seeing that bad hair day, or you take it as an insult to your character that is there, and you turn away and try to avoid looking at it because you're so bad to have bad hair. Guys, the analogy is appropriate because it's just bloomin' silly. Fix what you see. Easy. Now, your ego child's mind saying it's all futile. And I'm here to tell you that's bull. That's the ego child's mind propaganda telling you, stay safe, don't change. Bad things will happen if you don't listen to me. There's a higher self that's giving you information. It is God's voice, and it's saying, for heaven's sakes, work on yourself. You know why? Because you're listening to this show, and that's what I'm saying. For heaven's sakes, go fix your hair. Okay. I want to put something else on the thing, because all of this contributes to our feeling bad about ourselves, and that contributes to our loneliness. Guys, stop beating yourself up when you don't know something. Nobody's supposed to, thank you, John. Oh, you're so dear. I'm so glad to see you today. Guys, stop beating yourself up when you don't know something. You know, the idea of that you have to know everything is just ridiculous. But it is a common thing that I see people doing, is they beat themselves up for not knowing something. Technology breaks down. Oh, you know, I don't know it. Instead of, you know, the finest technicians in the world don't know either, because technology is always changing. So for God's sake, just call for help when you need it. And don't do all the drama. Are you addicted to drama? That's a thing that's going to keep you lonely. Do you always choose the dramatic way to think? Beating yourself up? Blaming somebody? Shaming somebody? Especially you? Don't do that. You remember something that I taught you a long time ago in these sessions. And that is, you got primary emotions, which is only about the event and the emotion surrounding that one event. And you've got secondary emotions that are all this bull that the ego child's mind propaganda creates for you. So you have a car accident. I'm so sorry. Let's say it's just a fender bender. Nobody's hurt. Okay? And you say, oh my God, you know, I am so sorry. Is everybody all right? Everybody's okay. Super. Everything's fine. It upsets you to begin with, for sure, because it's out of the norm. You've hurt your car. There's a fender bender. No, but everything's okay. All right? Don't go into, nothing I do is ever right. I'm just awful. This is horrible. I let myself down. I've disappointed anybody who loves me. I just always make bad mistakes. What? No. Look, everybody can have a look away and change the radio and run into the person in front of them a little bit. I mean, it's true. Stay with the primary. You got a car to fix now. You're going to have some expense. You disappointed yourself, and you're going to look and be more careful in the future. That's all you need. I guarantee you, if you're going to all the secondary emotional responses in the ego child's mind, you bet you're going to feel alone. And you bet you're going to take it into loneliness. Stop doing that. Just stick with the primary emotion. Let life be as easy and as simple and as clean as it is designed to be without all those issues and complications. Next, work on your clarity of thought, your focus. We're right to not listen to ourselves in the ego child's mind and as the dependent personality or whatever else is going on. We're right not to listen. But part of your journey is to learn how to listen and to make yourself someone worthy to listen to you. I think that's extremely important. Once you start playing in those arenas of your potential where God's voice is really strong and it's the highest self part of you, your messages are going to be right. And what you're trying to do is reach that part of you. Observe, don't talk. Now, that's not a general rule. Sometimes it's really important to share. But observe. That's part of the process, too, of your healing and the healing of other people who know you. One of the things we wake up to, and we have 3 minutes left, one of the things we wake up to as you go on your process is that your time is valuable and your gifts are unique to you. When we're in the ego child's mind, we think we're not anything special, or we are inflating ourselves to be more special than others. The fact is, when you really will let life flow and roll out, you're going to find your life purpose. That will keep you happy. You will not be alone there. If you're stuck and don't let yourself have any movement in these arenas to go and find what's around the next bend, of course you will feel very alone and very lonely because you're not connected, again, to yourself. Give yourself something to look forward to, ladies and gentlemen, please. Giving yourself something to look forward to is really important. Now, I didn't get to something that I want to talk with you all about next week. And it was an article that I thought was excellent. The article is Why Empathy is the Solution to Loneliness and Narcissism, according to neurologists. We're going to talk about that next week. And we're also going to talk about how to be happy and successful, some really important topics that are beyond even what we have said today. Again, I go back to, if you are lonely, reach out. Reach out sincerely as the lonely person. Oh, thank you, Sheila. That's so dear and sweet of you. Thank you for saying
90 seconds.
Oh, they're talking to me. Samuel, sounds good to me. You guys are adorable. I just get a kick out of you every week. Thank you so much, dear hearts, for listening to the show and for spreading the word about this show on social media. That is so dear. Peter says, my mom always preached having something to look forward to, so simple but a great concept. And, oh, sweetie, thank you. Hope I didn't know you were listening. How dear for all of you. Okay, I want you to know, as soon as we get off this show, I'm praying for you all. Okay, and you have a great weekend too, beautiful Sheila. And beautiful everybody. Y'all are just the greatest and adorable. I'm so glad you listened today. We had fun. And you guys now, go on. There is no reason for you to drown in any kind of loneliness. You are not alone. You aren't. Not at all. That's a big old fat lie. Okay. God bless all of you. And thank you again for getting the word around on social media about these shows. I think you can post some of the shows, so thank you. We love you very much. And we've
10 seconds.
got a great friendship and a great community. Take care of yourself. You're being prayed for right now. God bless you. See you next week.